Hello there, and welcome to the online marketing course brought to you by the Idaho Innovation Center, the Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Development Center of Idaho, and Volpine Marketing. We're also sponsored awesomely by the good team here at Andex. We are coming at you live from the studio here located in the West Bank. So if you guys are looking for a way to take up the production quality on your next online event, I totally hope that you guys give these guys a shout out and give them a reach because they are so good to work with. So I don't know how many people we have in here yet. I think we're still waiting for a couple of people to kind of come on here. We have a good amount of people, but as always, this first few minutes here are always just kind of that onboarding stage there. But I hope that through kind of all this, I've had some awesome opportunity to be able to sit down with several members of the class. I've sat down with Maria. I've sat down with Jana in the past. I've also had a chance to be able to sit down with several of you and to have several appointments scheduled. So as always, I'm going to remind you, I am offering some office hours essentially. So if you guys have further questions or would like some insight into your specific situation, I'm here. I absolutely want to help you and look forward to being as helpful and as awesome as I possibly can be to help you guys grow your business in the way that you're wanting to there. Hey there, Jana, how are you? But good to see all of your faces, those that I can see here. It looks like a lot more kind of coming on here. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them there in the comment section there on Zoom, and I'll do my best to answer those questions as they come up. But today we're going to be talking about social media marketing. We're going to be talking about ways to be able to kind of use this in a way that's going to be the most meaningful for you. This is kind of a buzzword, and a lot of times people come to me and they say, oh, we want to do social media marketing. And while there's so much opportunity for it, for some businesses, it's just not the best play. But for other businesses, doing things like SEO or pay-per-click advertising doesn't really make sense for them, right? And in general, for example, one of my good friends, they do these flexible speakers that they put inside of their motorbike helmets or their snowmobile helmets or whatever, and they can listen to music while they ride. It's an awesome product. But you know what? Being found in Google is probably not going to be that helpful, right? People aren't necessarily just thinking off the top of their head, I wonder if they have flexible speakers that go inside helmets. Like, people might think that, and if they are well positioned for those searches when they come, fantastic. But more often than not, like that, the people have to be educated in order for them to be able to use that product. That's when social media advertising is just absolutely gold, and we're going to be talking about that today. So, social media, I really consider it kind of the billboard of today. I think social media is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful way to be able to build brand awareness today. Now, years ago, it was a bit of a different story, and you saw people rely pretty heavily on things like billboards, like these beauties here. I don't really know what the product is here. I don't really know what's going on, but here's an awesome screenshot of a terrible billboard. Here's another one. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. My dogs do. Yeah, this is gold, right? This is the moneymaker, right? I'm sure this is going great for these guys, right? And then they have this call to action here: free consultation for truck, car, motorcycle, wrongful death, those kind of things. Oh, okay, so that's what type of law you do. Anyways, super weird. But this was kind of the way that people went about advertising here, right? This is one of the best ways to be able to get in front of people in kind of a mass approach, right? It was either that or it was TV or something like that. But there's so many things that are left. There's so many things that are not working for these necessarily. The only targeting that you're really able to do is people who drive by this area, people who watch this news station, whatever it is. There's so many limitations to it. Here's another great billboard. I have no idea what it's for. But the problem is everyone's on their phone. Right? And so if you have a billboard, like, everyone is on their phone, everyone, right? Sometimes even the driver, right? So billboards as effective as they may have been back in the day, there's so many better avenues today at your disposal. Another problem is billboards are kind of expensive. They're coming out with better ways to do it with like the digital billboards and stuff like that to kind of keep the cost a little bit lower, which I think is incredibly wise. But in general, like it's still a fairly pricey way to be able to go about it. This is a statistic from kind of one of the websites I was looking into as far as, this is a company who is producing billboards, right? So I don't exactly know what Idaho Falls would be considered maybe a medium-sized market, but I mean, that's relatively pricey, right? Even if it's like $1,500 for a month, for a small business that's like trying to get started and trying to get going or trying to grow to that next level, that could be quite a bit to bite off, right? That could be quite a bit to chew. Whereas that same amount, if that was done in social media marketing, could go significantly further. Here's another problem, and this one's going to be illustrated for a divorce law firm. Here's your billboard, right? Well, these people are happily married, right? They will not need your services. These people are single. They always will be. So, hopefully they won't need a divorce attorney, right? These people don't actually even live here, right? They were just visiting your town and drove past your billboards, so wasted. These people weren't paying attention. They were on their phones. These people were on their phones. They saw your billboard, but then went with someone who offered a similar service to you, but they found them on Facebook. That one person actually called you, right? Now, it's hard to say how effective a billboard can or cannot be in different circumstances. I'm sure everyone knows examples of ways that's been incredibly successful. For example, my good friend Farhan Naqvi, one of my clients when I was at Nifty there, if you go to Las Vegas, you'll see his face absolutely everywhere. He litters the sides of the street in Las Vegas there with his billboards, and it's been incredibly effective for him, but it's been also very, very expensive. But the good news is there's a better way, right? And that is Facebook, right? Facebook and social media marketing and advertising just in general. So you might say, well, I'm already doing Facebook, right? I think this is a really common one. I'm already doing Facebook. Well, here's a few examples of companies who are doing Facebook, right? And most of the time, the people who are liking a lot of their posts, a lot of the things that people are actually seeing, well, they're being liked by two people, which are generally the owners of the company and their mom. And, this post, this little statistic down here at the bottom here, the 128 people reached in one engagement, that's from the Bank of Idaho. That's a fairly large company. That's a company that you would think would have a lot of people that would know them and would possibly interact with their page, right? They'd have a lot of visibility because they're a big company. That's not necessarily the case. And in this example, this kind of proves it. Even though they're a large company, that doesn't necessarily mean that your Facebook posts are going to get very far. So this is what's called the Facebook business page organic reach. So let's say you decide you're going to post something on Facebook. You're doing Facebook, right? That's what people say. This is kind of how far that gets. Before, like in 2008, you would see a lot of business posts. You'd see a lot of them. Gradually over time, you have seen less and less organic posts. And what I mean by organic is like you just come across that. You're right. You just see this business's information in your timeline, in your feed there, on your social media platforms. That has just gone down significantly over time. In fact, the founder of Facebook has kind of said in January 2018, like what people really want, we've asked people. What they really want to see is they really want to see posts from their friends and their family. And while this might be true, what Mr. Zuckerberg is really saying is we want businesses to have to pay us. Something you have to keep in mind is that if there's ever something that's free, you're probably the product. When it comes to Facebook, that is absolutely the case. You, as an active user on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on whatever these various platforms are, if you're not paying for it, it's because someone else is paying to be able to get to you, right? So this is essentially what Zuckerberg is really, really saying. You got to pay to play. If you want people to really be able to see your content, you really want to be able to get to the right people, you're going to have to pay us. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can do organic social media in ways that are really, really effective. You know, I see people doing giveaways and that people have to share their post to be able to get into it. I see people like myself, if I have a client that's having a difficult time choosing a logo, I'll have logo options out there, and then I'll ask people for their input. And it's a great way to be able to get engagement. So I'm not saying there are no ways to be able to do effective organic social media, but really more often than not, you have to pay for it to really be effective. But what's so cool about social media marketing is that there's so many targeting capabilities, right? So if you know exactly who that audience is, then you can get in front of them. You can target people based on where they're located. You can target people based on where they're located and where they actually live, right? So if you're a company that wants to get in front of tourists, you can say people who are within Las Vegas but are not from Las Vegas. That's incredible, right? You can say, I want to get in front of, I've had really, really crazy ads for people who, you know, at one time on my Facebook page, it said I went to Auburn University, which is an area that I did live for a while, but I lived in Idaho. And so I got this Facebook ad for like this cup, this mug that was like, living in Idaho, but my heart's in Auburn, Alabama. And anyways, it was just kind of an odd thing, but that just kind of shows you the level of targeting that you really can do. Age, gender, income level, behaviors, which is an interesting one, relationship status. You can also target them by the changes in their relationship status. So if someone goes from, you know, married to it's complicated, then hey, maybe that's a good time for my divorce attorney to get in front of them, right? So there's so many different ways that you can go about that. So many different things. Facebook really is kind of this all-seeing eye. They know way too much about you. And before you go put on your tinfoil hat, which I get might be kind of unnerving, there are ways that this could be advantageous for you, right? And of course, before we go on any further, I know there's going to be questions about like, well, what about Instagram? What about LinkedIn? What about all these other platforms? Why are we talking so much about Facebook? Well, the thing is that a lot of these other platforms, including TikTok and Snapchat and so many others, they are all basing a lot of their decisions and their targeting capabilities off of what Facebook is doing. I mean, really, so, I kind of made the comparison a few weeks ago about like Google and Bing, that a lot of times when Google updates their algorithm, Bing will eventually try to do the same thing, and that is often the case. But a lot of these platforms have very, very comparable targeting capabilities. So while we are going to talk about Facebook in particular, you have to realize that a lot of the options that are available for you on Facebook are available on these other platforms as well. Facebook and Instagram are obviously, they're owned by, Facebook owns Instagram, right? So if you are like, well, what about Instagram? Well, it's through Facebook, right? It's through Facebook ads. If you're wanting to really get in front of people on a regular basis, it's done through Facebook. There are ways that you can use Instagram in a way that gets a little bit further of organic reach than Facebook generally does, using hashtags and using different things like that. But I cannot help but wonder if that will not change more and more, just like Facebook's platform did, right? So if you're just killing it on Instagram right now, I wouldn't count on that lasting forever. But do what you can when you can, right? So once again, kind of coming back here to these different capabilities, if I want to get in front of a particular audience, let's say I want to get in front of people, females ages 30 to 45 that live in Idaho Falls, that have an active interest in small business, that are married, that make a certain amount of money, right? There are ways that you can literally get in front of that audience. The bottom one is kind of interesting. I didn't really address this earlier, but people that are similar to your existing clients. Now this is interesting. This is called a lookalike audience. And essentially, if you have this big old long email list of all your clients, and you say, I want to get in front of people like this, you can actually upload that email list into Facebook, and it will kind of extrapolate a bunch of different data points and say, okay, based on the people who are in this list, we think this is the type of person. Now, I've seen it be incredibly effective. In fact, I've seen it be uncomfortably effective for a divorce attorney. So one of the ways that I really think that you should look at this is as you're looking at this audience, like think of it like a hose, right? Now there over on one side you have this guy kind of showering. You can kind of see that there's very little pressure to the hose. He's just kind of generally using that to kind of bathe himself. Like that's all well and good, but it's not very targeted, right? It's not very concentrated. It's not incredibly effective. It might be doing okay, but you know, if he's really trying to get clean, if he's really trying to do something, like it doesn't have enough pressure or enough concentration behind it to really get the job done. Whereas, of course, you have this other image here where it's extremely concentrated and high pressure. And that's really what we try to do. You know, if you kind of think of it, you know, when you put your finger over the hose, over the entrance there, and you can really concentrate that stream and really increase the pressure, that's kind of what you're thinking of. As you do this, as you narrow it in, you are closing off a portion of that hose. You are making it more concentrated. You're making your ability to cater your messaging to that audience significantly stronger because you know exactly who that person is, right? So as you're trying to do these, what I'm going to recommend is that you really think of who your ideal customer is. Now, you might kind of do it a little bit backwards and not just kind of say, okay, well, here's kind of some generalities, but you might be able to think of specifically the persona of a person that you're looking for. You know, for example, one of my good friends and one of my clients is Steven Groth out of Toledo, Ohio. He's a man that I absolutely love. He's been a fantastic client. We've had a great relationship. So I can kind of say, okay, what about Steven? How can I get more Stevens, right? And I can kind of think about different characteristics about him that make him a great client and see if there's not a way that you might be able to target that individual, right? So now in our exercise, we're going to have a chance for you to think about who is your ideal audience based on these targeting capabilities, right? So based on these different things that Facebook and these different social media platforms give you, who really is your ideal target audience or your ideal customer? And I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple minutes here for you to walk through that exercise. If we can open up to our homies here. All right, so we've had a chance to kind of think about, and obviously this is not enough time. I hope that you go back and I hope you really, really take the time to think about exactly who your audience is and who you're trying to get in front of. The more you do this, and it might seem kind of silly, it might seem kind of odd, but the more that you can really, really define who this audience is, the better off you're going to be, the more targeted you can be. the more pressure that you can have, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead. Welcome, class. It's good to see everybody here. We've had a few more people pop in here. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for a few people to really talk about who their audience is. Let's see here. Maria, are you with me? And would you be willing to kind of talk about who your ideal target market and audience is based on these different areas?
Hi, yes, here.
You're awesome.
Thanks. So one of the things that I've done is that I've been able, I'm sorry, my dog thinks you can talk to. I've been able to target a lot based on the area. So right now, my biggest focus is Southeast Idaho. So I put in the actual cities and then it brings up the target. I went in and did a lot more and I was able to select the ages and then I was able to select like men, women in relationships, not relationships. So it was really, I didn't find one for like language, the language, but I was able to do a lot. And I believe my target reach, supposedly the ones that I'm able to reach, was like 190,000 just in these areas. Like that's what I could potentially reach.
Right. And once again, one of the cool things about Facebook, I think I failed to put that information in here, but social media advertising is one of the best and least expensive ways to be able to reach like 1,000 people. Right? It kind of talks about like the amount of investment that you need to be able to reach 1,000 people. That's kind of one of the metrics they use for a lot of different marketing avenues. Facebook and social media, gold as far as that goes. Really inexpensive way to be able to get in front of them. So thank you, Maria. Appreciate your time. Let's see here. Let's go Zoe. Would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of who you think is your most ideal audience there and kind of what that individual looks like if you're there with us?
Yeah, so we obviously do more women than men. So I put down women and then 16 to 60. Most of my clients and clients in the lounge are like 20 to 30. But we do have a lot of younger clients and older clients. So yeah, Southeast Idaho, I've had a lot of clients that are from Idaho Falls, but we're going to Rigby. So people will like travel pretty far to get their lashes done. So yeah.
And kind of within that audience, just kind of a follow-up question there, Zoe, do you feel like, obviously there are those kind of 16-year-olds and kind of younger age group like that would be willing to, but kind of within that 16 to 60, you say, 20 to 30 is kind of who you see the most. Do you feel like there's a more ideal audience kind of within that range that might be better to target, even though you may be getting a lot of 20 to 30?
Yeah, so we have a lot of moms and we're open from 9 to 7. So usually they come in when their kids are at school. So targeting more like family, moms, people.
Cool. That's interesting. There's so many different ways. Like if you really were to sit down and kind of like look at all the different information about about your clients, I wonder if you could say, yep, 9 times out of 10 they're, this is a generalization, I don't know if this is accurate, but if you can dial and say they're married, they do this, they have this many children, like I just wonder if there's like more information that you could use to kind of dial in there. I think it's a really natural thing for people to be like, oh, but all these people could be our audience, right? And whereas maybe that's true, maybe we can kind of find, that golden client, whatever, right?
Yes. And also, I've noticed a lot of nurses like to get their lashes done since they are, super busy. They don't have time to do makeup. So usually it's moms and nurses that are our clients. So.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, geez, if you can narrow it in like that, and you could even have a Facebook ad directly for those. If you have a client that, gets her lashes done and is okay with you snapping a quick picture after you're done, then you can show that ad. Maybe she's in her scrubs and everything. Man, you become the lash girl of the medical professionals in the area. That would be fantastic, right? That's a dialed in audience right there. It's solid. Let's see here. We'll go Jana and then Angel, if you wouldn't mind sharing after Jana.
Okay, so I just did a quick brainstorm. And again, I mean, I'm willing to test these audiences. I don't know, but the things I wrote down were baby boomers in Europe. To remind you guys that I'm doing an online judo fitness class. I wrote down men that want a home workout that isn't too feminine, because I feel like a lot of the home workouts are marketed to women, like Zumba and dance classes and things like that. I don't think, but I think there's certainly plenty of men that need to get up off the couch, but they don't, this would be a way for them to feel, like they're doing a martial art. Judo athletes that are stuck at home. So Europe is still on heavy lockdown. There's probably not a lot of judo studios open right now in certain parts of the world. And women who want to feel tough but are not confident enough to go into a local studio. I'm hoping that to draw some of them in, like, okay, build your confidence in your living room, work through the awkward phase in the privacy of your own living room in front of your cat. And then hopefully that builds you enough confidence to go look up your local studio and go into there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're completely right. Jana has a few different audiences in here that she could potentially target, right? And we're actually going to be talking about that a little bit later as far as the way that you can kind of A/B test to kind of find out who is the best audience. So we're going to be talking about all those things. The way Jana has them all pinned down, those are all fairly narrowly defined in my mind. All those audiences would be good. So then we're going to be talking later about, like, okay, cool, we have these different personas pinned down. That's fantastic. Let's target them, right? And we'll be talking about that. Also, I think you're completely right as far as the men that the stay-at-home workout thing, that they're kind of looking for that. I think that's great. My wife had a Jillian Michaels video or something like that, and I was like, oh, what the heck, I'll do it. But I was in my basement, and we had these windows, and I made sure they were drawn. I didn't want anybody seeing me doing a Jillian Michaels video, but man, that thing kicked my butt. It was a fantastic workout, but I felt kind of dumb doing it, I'll be honest. So I think that's a great example there. All right, Angel, if you're there with us, would you mind sharing yours? And then let's see, we'll go Steve after that, and then we'll move on.
Oh, okay. So mine would be specifically males, because I would mostly do strength training and endurance and that stuff. But mostly, ideally, lots of kids who are interested in sports training, because I do help mostly with that. But there would also be other programs for other people, because you can train literally anyone if they're wanting to train. And I get a lot of older ladies who wants to train, so obviously having programs for them and things like that.
Nice. Yeah, those are all pretty darn good audiences there. Kind of the young student athletes, the older women. Yeah, pretty much anyone could be right. But yeah, if you can narrow it in, kind of say, okay, this is the audience that I'm targeting, then your ability to be able to speak to them individually just is so much stronger, right? I mean, maybe it's the parent of someone who is a student athlete, right? And you can kind of say, hey, help your daughter get ready for basketball season, right? Don't want any ACL tears, right? So that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Let's see here. Steve, if you're there with us, do you mind talking about your audience there? If you're there with us, you might not be. I know it's hard with these different Zoom calls. People come in and out. But yeah, all right. Sounds good. Let's go ahead and let's go back to the presentation there. So we've kind of talked about this. I hope you guys have kind of narrowed that down. Sounds like several of you are definitely on a fantastic path as far as that goes. So now that we have kind of that audience, right? We have kind of who we're targeting. Then we have the chance to be able to kind of sit down and think like, well, what motivates them, right? What really motivates this particular person to action, right? And then you can kind of incorporate those different elements into your ads and things like that. Now we're going to be talking about kind of setting up an ad campaign and like actually how to do it in Facebook. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go create a Facebook ad account. it is different than just a Facebook page. So it is something that needs to be set up. Obviously, they are tied together, they're closely related, but they are different. I think Facebook's coming a long ways that they're kind of like trying to make them a little bit closer related, but there for a while they were oddly separate and distinct from one another, but they're kind of coming around. So you need to do that. You need to be focusing kind of on these different, and there's a lot of videos and resources and stuff on how to do that. I'm not going to go into how to create the ad account, but I will provide resources in the Facebook group that can kind of help walk you through that process. And the reason I don't have that is because it changes fortnightly. All right, it's one of my biggest frustrations with Facebook is like if I was to do like a video tutorial on how to do it, it would be irrelevant in a week, and it is so annoying. But go find the most updated, most current resource on how to create an ad account, and that will probably be the most helpful thing you can do as far as walking you through there. So YouTube University there is going to be your best friend. But here's the different things that you need to be focusing on when you're creating your ads. You need to be talking about your objective, right? What are you trying to get people to do? We'll talk about here in just a minute as far as what's available, but are you trying to get them to come to your website and then call you? Are you trying to get some kind of information? Are you trying to get them to sign up for a newsletter, to subscribe to that? Are you trying to get them to download an ebook? Are you trying to get them to view a video? Or are you just trying to generate more likes on your Facebook page and let people know that you're there? You know, what is the objective? What are you trying to accomplish, right? And so that's kind of what you need to pin down first, is exactly what you're trying to do with this Facebook ad. And then, of course, the other components of it, which I feel like, these are obviously extremely important. We're going to be talking about media. We're going to be talking about ad copy and stuff like that. And it's good that you put emphasis on that. But I feel like way too many people put a huge emphasis in creative and not enough time on the objective and not enough time on the audience. And I think that it's a huge missing component there if you're not really focusing on your audience, because that shapes everything else, right? If you know exactly who you're speaking to, then the images that you show, the video that you show, the things that you write in your ad copy, all of that becomes a little bit more natural if you know who you're speaking to, right? So here's in Facebook ads, as you go to create this new campaign, here's all the different categories that you can choose from, right? So if you just want people to come to your website, then fantastic. There's ways to be able to do that. If you want people to come, and if you have like a set conversion that you have, maybe once they fill out a form and something like that, like you can kind of use that as kind of your conversion, your goal, your objective. These are often the ones that I find the most valuable. And so 9 times out of 10, I go with these different campaign objectives, and it's probably what I'm going to recommend you do as well most of the time. Now, obviously, if you have like an app install or something like that, that's clearly a better resource or a better option there for you. But in general, this is kind of what I feel to be the best. The reach, I think, is one of the weakest objectives, simply because what reach does is it tries to get in front of all of your audience members at least once, which is great, but being in front of a person once is seldom effective. Seldom. So if you're really trying to build something, you're really trying to get people to remember you, brand awareness is significantly stronger route to go. You can also set your budget. So you can say, okay, I have $1,000 tops that I'm going to go through. Then of course you can set that as kind of the lifetime budget of that campaign. Or you can say, I will do $5 a day. I have no end date. I don't care. I'm going to go $1 a day for the rest of eternity, right? And that's going to be kind of the campaign objective, so you can kind of define what you want that to be. I really, really prefer doing daily budgets as opposed to lifetime budgets, even if I say I have $1,000, right? I still think that's fairly kind of the stronger way to go. Just my personal preference. After that, now here's kind of where we get into it, right? We're creating this audience, right? And so you can kind of see here, like if you have certain saved audiences, then that's fantastic, right? Then you can kind of say, I want to get in front of these people that I've already clearly defined. Assuming you haven't saved one in the past, then you can kind of go forward and you can kind of make these selections. As you can see there, Maria, right down there at the very, very bottom, let's see here, I'll try to point to it. You can select languages, right? So if there are a particular type of language that you're hoping to get in front of, this is kind of where you can go select that. The most of these are pretty darn self-explanatory though, of course. All these pretty straightforward, right? Where are they located? Well, are they in Idaho Falls, Idaho? Are they in the state of Idaho? Are they in Utah? What's their age? Pretty straightforward, right? Gender, all that kind of stuff, right? It does get a little bit tricky for what's called a special ad category. So if you're a bank and you have a credit card offer, or if you have a loan, or if you have if you're an apartment owner and you have an occupancy that you want to get filled, then it becomes a little bit tricky because you have some kind of some limitations there. Facebook considers it discriminatory to say, I want to offer my credit card services to this audience and not these other people. So banks and stuff like that tend to have some problems. Assisted living homes, they're considered residents. So you're not able to say we want these particular people because it's discriminatory. But for general businesses, for a realtor, for a martial artist, for whatever it might be, for a marketing agency, generally you can target pretty well based on whatever you want. This is kind of where it gets crazy, right? This detailed targeting. This is where you have like the most opportunity to be able to dial in that audience based on these different types of things. Based on demographics, interest, and behaviors. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. So demographics, you can say, I want to target people that have a certain education level, that went to a particular university, that got this much education, that have this kind of specialized training. I want to target people who are going through an interesting life event, a job change. I want to target people who have had a child within the last 6 months. I want to target people that work at a particular company. Like, there's so many different ways that you can go and target people based on the demographics, based on the information that's displayed here. Now, interests. Now, this one is kind of where it gets interesting. If people have an interest in fitness, in weightlifting, in small business, if they have an interest in web development, whatever it is, like this is kind of the area where you can really target that based on whatever that is. I believe with Jana, one time when we were sitting down and chatting, there was actually like active interest in judo, right? So if there are people that are into something in particular in your industry, chances are it is an interest. Now, it doesn't get way granular, and there are certain interests that I think are really odd that you can target, and there's not some that I think would be a little bit more prevalent. So it's all kind of a matter of hopping in there and looking through the different targeting ability that you have at your disposal there. Behaviors. So anniversaries. Based on people have an anniversary that's coming up in the next month, you can just show ads to that individual. By the way, it is my anniversary today. I believe my wife is here in the group, so I just wanted to wish her, a happy anniversary, and thank you so much for sticking with me for these 9 awesome years. And then there's so many different other things that you can be able to target people. People who have moved to the United States from Brazil, that's under the expat section. People who are stronger, this is the consumer classification. So people who are more likely to buy from a Facebook ad, you can actually target those people that are more inclined to make those ads or have in the past or have engaged in different ads. These are all kind of the things that, like, when you engage with a Facebook ad for Adidas, then all of a sudden your Facebook feed is filled with all these different shoe ads. I don't know if you guys have had that experience. I know that I have. This is where a lot of that is done. As far as the way Facebook tracks your active interest and things like that, well, if all of a sudden you go to Amazon and then Amazon starts showing you ads on whatever the topic is, Facebook will take note of that and also show you ads that are relevant to whatever that is. So lot of targeting abilities that are at your disposal, and what really matters is just the strategy behind your targeting. Once again, if you can dial in that audience, you can target them. So actually creating the ad. So you have the opportunity, if you want, to actually create the ad, right? And that means you upload the image or the video or whatever that content is and show that. But then you also have the opportunity to have an existing post. So if you have a particular Facebook post that just had a lot of engagement, a lot of people liked it, a lot of people commented on it, they gave your opinion on the latest and greatest logo design that you're presenting for one of your clients, then you can actually use that as your ad content, right? So that's really, really helpful, especially once again, if there is a lot of engagement. There's a lot of likes and things like that. So people can say, oh, this is something that other people have found interesting. This must be something worth commenting on. That is often when that can be fairly advantageous for you, is if you have Facebook posts that have a lot of engagement, right? That like that, and you're trying to harbor more of that interaction. So that's really, really effective. Using the Creative Hub mockup, that's just like Facebook has some different stock resources and stuff like that that you can use. But generally, I create my own ads or I'm using existing posts. That's kind of my default there. You can also make sure that as you're creating it, that's associated with your Instagram account as well as your Facebook page. If you don't want it on Instagram, well, that's fine. You can just have that not hooked up, right? You can just kind of exit out of that and not have it adding to your Instagram account. There are other places that you can edit your placement, that you can kind of say, okay, I want it in these segments of Facebook or these segments of Instagram, but not these other ones. And you can actually dictate that where it goes. So if you really want to have your ads in the Facebook Marketplace, and when people are looking on that section of Facebook, you can dictate that if you feel like that's the strongest opportunity for you. Otherwise, you can actually just select manual placements and let Facebook kind of determine where it should be placed. I've seen really, really great results doing either. So here's kind of some of your different options there. If you are going to be creating your ad and not using an existing post, you have the chance to be able to do like a single image or video or carousel. I will always recommend that you either do carousel or do video. I don't recommend 9 times out of 10 just doing a single image. And the reason for that is the carousel ads, these are the ones that have multiple ads there that you can kind of slide between. That interaction is something that Facebook likes, even if it's an organic post or if it's a sponsored post or an ad. They like it when people engage with your content. So adding those carousels means more interactions, which means Facebook is more likely to show your ads because people seem to be interested in that content, and that's beneficial for them. Video is also super powerful. We're going to be talking a lot about video here shortly, but I think it's the strongest way to be able to communicate whatever your message is. So single image, I mean, if you really feel like you have a super killer image that's just way, way strong, then fantastic. Otherwise, carousel and video. Top recommendations there. Also, this is just kind of the place where you can edit whatever the text is of your ad, right? Once again, I'm always a fan of letting your images do the talking. I wouldn't recommend even putting this much text in there 9 times out of 10. I just don't think that's strong. People hate reading, right? People are lazy. But this is kind of where you can kind of dictate the general ad copy that you have there. So now you've created your ads, right? Now, how do we determine which one is best, right? Well, this is kind of where I recommend that we focus. We either focus on determining what the creative is best, right? What video, whatever image, whatever ad copy is the strongest, or I recommend that you test what is the strongest audience, right? So let me show you exactly what I mean by this. So one of my clients is the Bank of Idaho. When they started doing the PPP loans, they wanted to target a few different audiences. So, they wanted to target a few different audiences. And so what we did here was we have kind of the same audience in this particular one, but we had different ads that we were showing, right? So this particular audience, I think this was people who are existing clients of the Bank of Idaho. So we said, hey, existing client, did you know that we're doing this? And we had 3 different ads talking about that, right? And we showed that to the audience. Then later, we could come back and we could see, okay, that bottom ad group is the strongest. It had the most links. It was, just kind of maybe the strongest offering, right? It received the most impressions, all that jazz, right? So that's helpful for you to be able to kind of say, okay, this ad is stronger than this ad, right? So then you can kind of make some decisions moving forward of saying, okay, well, if these 2 are the weaker ads, let me swap them out with new ones so that I can continue to test what creative is strongest. On the inverse, if you have what I'd recommend, so you either target the audience and have different audiences, or you have different ads to the same audience. And the reason that I say that is because if you have different audiences and then different ads, you don't know what worked. You don't. You just don't have that data. So you could say, okay, well, maybe this ad creative was stronger, but you don't know that because there's so many other variables. So if you limit the amount of variables that you have there based on these are the audience or these are the ads, that makes it easier for you to A/B test and kind of move forward. So for this particular example, we had the same ads. We were showing exactly the same images, but we did it to people that had an active interest in business or the friends of people who like our Facebook page already, right? So that's kind of what we did, and the answer to this one was the top one was a much stronger ad. So now kind of going on, like we kind of understand a bit how to do that. If you have questions about how to set up Facebook ads and do different things like that, once again, I am here to be a resource, so I hope that you'll reach out to me and I can do my best to provide you information that'll help guide you through that process. Now we're going to be talking about stories. We have kind of all these different things, right? We have the targeting. We have so much at our fingertips, and now we're going to be talking about stories. And why is that important? Well, we're programmed to do it. Stories are valuable. Stories matter. People care about stories. In fact, all throughout history, we have these cave drawings, right? We have these different things to kind of show the fact that we've been passing down stories for a long, long time. Here is a really terrifying story. This one is a German folk story that helps children to stop sucking their thumb. And basically, the whole concept of it is if you suck your thumb, then this tall tailor is going to come chop off your thumb. That is literally the story, and it's terrifying. Now, here's the moral of the story, right? This terrifying story, don't suck your thumb. That's interesting, right? Little Red Riding Hood. The story about this woman who was walking through the forest, runs into the big bad wolf, ends up talking to him a little bit more than she probably should. The moral of the story is don't talk to strangers, right? So we have these different things that we're trying to accomplish, but they did it telling stories. They didn't say, hey, don't talk to strangers, pretty young woman. Don't suck your thumb, child. No, we scared the crap out of them, right? That's great. So the stories, they're effective because they're memorable, right? Okay, there's going to be some guy running around with giant scissors that's going to chop off my thumb. That's fairly memorable, right? Kind of traumatic and scarring, but memorable nonetheless, right? Interesting. Well, yeah, if you have something to tell a person, you could just straight up tell them, hi, I'm Ryan Joseph. We make websites. I mean, that's fantastic, right? That's great. That's killer content there. Or you could kind of talk about the story behind what we did. We've helped this business grow their revenue by doing this. We created this website that told their story, that showcased their products. That's significantly stronger, right? And then, of course, it helps to be able to form an emotional connection. This is important because, well, if you're just sharing information about your product, then what is that? I feel like there's a bit of a balance, right? There's the sales side of things, and then there's the storytelling side. And you see this throughout a lot of different types of commercials, right? You see this a lot in Apple's ads and things like that there's a lot of storytelling, but not so much sales, right? They don't come at you and are like, hello, we have this computer and it does this, and this is the processing power, and blah, 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 blah. No, there's this old Mac ad, this old Apple ad of this woman throwing this hammer through this mirror and through this window, and it's so powerful, but doesn't have a lot to do with computers necessarily. So on the sales side, we have these strong calls to action, right? Call now, buy our product, do all these kind of things. You should buy this computer because X, Y, and Z. And then on the other hand, of course, we have this emotional connection, which is extremely valuable, but it doesn't have that strong call to action. It doesn't explain necessarily what the unique value propositions of your product or your company is. So the downsides, of course, is like, well, one side is just too salesy. It's just too in your face, right? And then the other side is there's no direct call to action, right? What is selling without storytelling? Infomercials, right? I mean, so if you're out there to be the Snuggie of law firms, if you're out there to be the Snuggie or whatever, and all you're interested in is making a buck, then maybe infomercials could be a good way to go about it, right? Maybe you really feel like whatever your product is a very logical sale, and that's the way you want to be able to appeal to people, is through their logic. Then fantastic. Maybe infomercials is kind of the best way to go about it. But I just don't necessarily feel that that's the case. And then storytelling without selling, well, let's kind of go into that. Here's a ad. Let's go ahead and let's watch that if we can.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you.
Awesome. So, I mean, that commercial, I don't know if many people who are watching this remember this, but this is a commercial that was shown in the Super Bowl. For Budweiser to be able to show that commercial, it was probably millions of dollars to, for them to be able to show this commercial. And what does it really have to do with like drinking beer? Like, do I watch that and I'm like, what sounds good? A Budweiser. Not necessarily, but man, it is memorable. I have remembered this commercial very, very well. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that kind of feel similarly, right? So it was this chance to be able to kind of show this story and be able to tell this in kind of a fun and interesting way. Obviously, they have kind of their Clydesdale, or kind of their signature brand element there with that horse that's kind of been a big part of their brand all along. So it kind of incorporates that. But still, it's definitely very, very strong on the storytelling side of things, not necessarily the sales side. So what's this middle? What is this? Like, is there a way that we can try to find kind of this balance between the two? And the term that I've made up for this is the term folklore. So this is kind of the way of using your unique value propositions, whatever those are, right? We talked about that in week number 1, right? Of trying to really pin down and nail what your UVP is, while also trying to incorporate that in an interesting way with storytelling. So the principles of folklore is you have to tell the right story. Now what that right story is, well, you've got to go find that out. You've got to go talk with your people. That's what the number one thing I can think of is chat with your audience, chat with your customers, and ask them, why do you choose Volpine Marketing? Why do you choose Blue Line Judo? Why do you choose, whoever this company is? Why do you choose us? And man, they will tell you. They will tell you. Hopefully they know, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm here for reasons X, Y, and Z. And that might be different than you might realize. So once again, it's important to ask that question. And so once again, it kind of comes down to just finding what that unique value proposition is and your audience will tell you, right? But if not, if you've got to go find out what that is, then do that. We talked about this once again in week 1 as far as kind of finding that opportunity that you do well, that your competitors don't, and your customers actually care about. And so once you have that right story, tell it to the right people. Once again, going back to the audience, that's so important. Find your tribe and love them hard. This has been a big principle for my company in particular. We are kind of a premium digital marketing agency. Not everyone can afford to work with us, sadly. We do our best to have products and services and offerings that fit a lot of people, but for so many people, it just isn't a great fit for one reason or another. And so the fact is, you have to be selective. You have to find those people that appreciate what you're doing, that appreciate your unique value propositions, and that is not going to be everyone. So you have to find that tribe. You have to find those individuals who truly get it, who truly appreciate your brand, and do everything you can to provide an incredible amount of value to them. That's all part of what I call tribe building. And that is just a process that's going to take time for you to really dial in exactly who that is and catering your messaging and catering your product to accommodate those individuals. Get that dialed in, right? Here's Rocky looking right down the arrow, right? Figure out exactly who that is. So here's kind of some examples of when we were able to do this. Bank of Idaho, right? I kind of showed you that the different audiences that we were targeting. Man, we had that dialed in. Business owners with an active interest in X, Y, and Z, man, we had that just nailed, right? So for this, for the Bank of Idaho, we put, several thousands of dollars behind these different ads, and it worked so incredibly well simply because we had that audience, right? Here's an example from my own Facebook page. This is, once again, this one is an organic social post, so I will say that, right? But you can kind of see here in the amount of people, that have engaged with it, or people that were able to see it. And a lot of that came down because I had a message here that I knew people would appreciate within East Idaho, right? That was the goal, is that I wanted East Idaho to be able to see this. And you know what? This is a message that they really, really care about, right? Just trying to keep Idaho the world's best kept secret. People are really passionate about this message. So I created material that spoke to that audience in a way that was meaningful to them, right? Here's kind of a case study. This is with my last company, Nifty Marketing. So I've kept kind of their branding elements on here, so you just were aware that this is not my current company, but one that I've worked for in the past. What the strategy was, once again, this is a workers' compensation law firm. So what they deal with is people who work in blue-collar industries who have been injured on the job, right? These factory workers, these assembly line, construction workers, you name it. That's the type of people that we wanted to get in front of. So the strategy was, well, let's put ads within a mile radius of these different companies that are fairly notorious for injuring their employees, right? Just because of the nature of their industry in general. So that's what we did, right? We targeted those people. So we have the right audience, and now do we have the right story? Yes. So what we did for these, once again, I think this is kind of a time where we use a single image. We found it to be significantly more effective to use video and to use carousel ads. But at first we were just using these images here. And what did we show them? Well, the right story, right? We had these images of these construction workers and these work gloves and these different things that these people could relate with. And it was extremely effective because we were speaking their language, right? We were speaking to them when we were showing things that they were familiar with. What we found for this, once again, one of the important things we need to realize about Facebook ads is that people who see the ads, they seldom are just like, yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for, and immediately convert, or immediately call you, or immediately become a client, immediately become a patient. That is so incredibly rare, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more soon. But what happened was people remembered them. All right, so within a matter of, I think, about 18 months of showing these Facebook ads on a monthly consistent basis, they had a 487% increase in the amount of people who were searching for their brand name. right? So people who are literally looking for the Walthew law firm, that increased by that much. And according to the law firm, they were doing no other marketing whatsoever besides we were doing Google stuff for them, but also we were doing Facebook ads. So huge amount of people who are looking directly for that company by doing Facebook ads, speaking to the right people in the right way, right? Going back to these, here's all these different things that we can use to be able to talk to the right people. And then, of course, tell the right story to the right people in the right way. And what I mean by the right way, I really mean video. Video content is so effective at getting this done for people. This is kind of a study that was done by DataBox, and it said which format drives more ad clicks on Facebook. Videos was 60% of it, right? And there are some people who are like, I don't know, it doesn't really make a difference there. But overwhelmingly, video was the way that people wanted that, or drove the most clicks. In a different study done by HubSpot, consumers were asked, like, how do you want to learn about a product or a service? They overwhelmingly said video content. That's the way to get in front of people. They say, an image, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, what about 60 frames per second, for 30 seconds, right? I mean, that's a lot of pictures, right? That's a lot more words to talk about. And why is it so effective? Well, which one did you look at first here? Right? We have two different images here, different sizes. I even made the one larger, right? But I feel so confident that your eyes were drawn to the one with motion here, right? Because it's moving. And our eyes are just naturally drawn to moving objects. So as we're scrolling through our feed, it is so easy to go past static images, right? But if something's moving, it's more likely to catch our eye. One of the most important principles that we can remember about video is that content will always win over production quality. This is just all there is to it. You can make some killer content or killer looking content, but if it's not actually good, then it doesn't matter, right? Here's kind of an example. Here is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I hate this movie. And apparently I'm not alone. 15%, like incredibly low, right? But this had a $217 million budget behind it. So if production quality was the only thing that mattered, this would have been a killer movie, but it isn't. What do people really want to see? Here's the video content that goes really, really far. It's Letitia getting her butt handed to her in the streets, right? I mean, this is super shaky, shot by someone on, this crazy iPhone 4, right? But this content goes viral because it's authentic, it's very interesting. Whether or not it should be, I guess, is a good question. But this content goes a long, long ways. And so that is the type of content I think we need to be creating, more violence. Just kidding. Here's an example of one of my clients that literally did a video that she had her iPhone and she recorded herself. And all she talked about was her service that she offers. And this is Leslie Lambert. She's an incredible artist. She's been an instructor for the University of Victoria up in Canada. She has done incredible things for the community of art and watercolor painting in general. So here she had a product that she was offering. It's some online watercolor courses. And so we knew her audience, and she had this really well defined. I was actually very, very impressed. She said, women, over a certain age, I think she said like over 40, over 45, something of that nature. Often ones that have recently been divorced or looking for something of that nature to kind of give their life a little bit more meaning. Man, that is just the golden audience for me. And she was right. So this Facebook ad that we ran, I think we did, basically we had it dialed in so that every $100 that we spent, we would have at least 1 to 2 people who would buy this $500 course. So at a return rate of $100, or spending $100, getting $500, that was an absolute no-brainer, right? We'll pour Facebook dollars into that all day if that's the kind of return that we can get, 100 to 500, right? And so this video is just her talking about her product, talking about who she is, and making the invitation for them to not go another year without art in their life, right? That was kind of like one of her closing lines there. But really, really effective, very, very simple. Production quality, relatively low, totally worked. Here's a video that we did for one of our clients, and I'll show 2 videos that we did for this particular individual, and we'll talk about that. Go ahead, Alan, there. So, I mean, obviously, we were there. We followed Brandon. This is Brandon Seeger out of Rigby. For those who are looking for a truck wrap, Brandon is the absolute man, right? He is such an incredible guy. And so this video is going to be very, very successful, right? It's interesting, right? There's loud music. It's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. And I think it's good content, right? But, you know, my approach to a lot of social media is fairly different. Obviously, we're going to produce this video and we're going to showcase it. We're going to get it out in front of people using Facebook ads. We're totally going to do that. But what I found to be really, really successful is fairly candid content. You know, people, obviously, they want a truck wrap, right? They want that for their company. That's why people reach out to Brandon in such a crazy way that they do. He's a very in-demand individual because he does incredible work. And hopefully this video showcases that. But there's also a type of content that I think is extremely effective because people don't always just buy what you do. A lot of times they buy you. You are the product. If you're the face of your company and if you're the one doing the work, then I think it's important for people to get to know you. And so this next piece of content here is a simple video. Oops, sorry there. Nope, not that one. There we go. This one.
And now the segment where Brandon's going to show us how he raps.
Yeah. The best rapper. I can't do that. I don't have any talent there.
So this is obviously really, really simple content, right? This is just showing Brandon and just talking with him and getting him to laugh. Because the thing is Brandon is, obviously he's really, really talented at what he does, but he is the most warm, most genuine people that I think I've ever met, right? And if people knew that, man, if people knew that, they wouldn't go anywhere else, right? This is the type of content that I think is extremely effective, is just giving people a peek beneath the hood, right? Behind the scenes, showing who these people are and who the real product is. This is the type of content that I think is going to win, and I'd love to see more people producing simple content of this nature. And then, of course, showing them via ads. All right? No, there we go. Here's another one. This is not a video there, but this is a screenshot from one of my friends. His name is Morris Lilienthal. He's an attorney down in Alabama, and he has a variety of different content that he produces on a regular basis. And as you can see here, just killer quality, right? No, not really. It's very, very simple content. It's literally, once again, him with an iPhone, generally just recording himself talking. But what he's been doing and what this particular content is just him talking about tips, about random advice on whatever the topic is. Let's see here. Failure is not an option is wrong. You can accept. Let's see. How to shop on Amazon. Our time is the most valuable commodity. You know, like there's a variety of random topics that Morris is sharing content on. This is an attorney. Is he the most qualified individual to be talking about these different topics? That is incredibly debatable. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. He is a very motivated, very successful individual that I personally love and really look up to, but the content that he's producing is fairly simple. It's just him talking, just him monologuing about very, very simple topics, right? What has happened is over time, as he has done these things, is he has become kind of a local celebrity there within his community. People come up to him all the time and are just like, oh, I loved what you said about X, Y, and Z. And you know what? When they are in need of legal assistance, guess who they think of? Mo. They think of Morris Lilienthal simply because he's been producing this really, really simple video content and then getting it out in front of people on a regular basis. So once again, content over production quality. It's what I'm going to preach so many times, is just to get out there and just be producing that type of content. As you do so, like, you're going to build your audience. You're going to build the people who are interested in what you have to offer. Like, consistency is key. So if you can dial in who you're talking to, if you can understand what they might be wanting advice on, and what they're looking for direction on, if you're willing to be vulnerable and show who you are, I think these are all fantastic ways that you can create social media content that matters and that people are going to be interested in. So, the last principle, tell the right story to the right people in the right way using video content. I'll let you determine what you really think is the right way, but I am heavily going to lean that way. But the last principle is again and again. And obviously this story could kind of change slightly, but the overall principle should be the same, right? If I'm showing a bunch of different ads for Seeger-Built Sign Shop and how they're the best truck wrappers in Idaho, then there's a number of ways that I can tell that story, right? But what we think is, like, people find us on Google, people see our social ads, people see whatever, they come to our website, they become clients, they immediately call, right? And things are just smooth sailing. That might be the case sometimes. I'm not going to say that never happens, but I am going to say that is incredibly rare that people will see your stuff and immediately interact with it. Just don't think that is a fairly realistic consumer cycle. The truth is, the buyer journey is complex, right? The human world is a mess. It takes anywhere from 20 to 500 touch points for a consumer to be able to make a decision, right? So you need to get in front of this audience again and again, right? You need to stay on top of their mind. And once again, I think Facebook ads and social ads in general are the best way to be able to do that because it's often the least expensive way. Once again, if you have your audience dialed in, it makes that significantly easier, right? If there's 400 people that you need to get in front of 20 times, that is a lot easier than 10,000, right? So this is a bit more of kind of how the consumer journey really looks. They see your social ad. They see another ad from you talking about a particular topic. Maybe they see your radio ad if you're doing that. They come to your website. They start comparing the different options between you and between some of your competitors. They see your ad on YouTube, if you're doing YouTube ads. They come back to the website again. Then you use remarketing, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, to get them to come back once again to the website. Then they do a Google search. They find you, they click on it, and then boom, they finally become a client. Like, this is more realistic. Even though this looks a little crazy, this is way more likely to happen than immediately converting, immediately becoming a client. Like, if you guys have any examples of times that you have seen a Facebook ad one time and then immediately made a purchase, I'm interested to hear about it because whatever they did, it was incredibly great. So remarketing, kind of going back to kind of this, what this kind of thing is, remarketing is a great way to be able to stay in front of people because it is difficult to get in front of people in a way that's what I'll say sticky, right? In a way that really is matters, in a way that is really influential. But let's say you did have at least a little bit of influence on a person at one point, and you want to stay in front of that person because they've already expressed interest. They've already come to your website. So that's fantastic, right? Remarketing via social ads, via if it's Facebook or if it's YouTube or whatever, is incredibly effective because that person is a warmer lead. They're further down that consumer funnel than someone who's just interacting with your brand for the first time ever, right? So the way that we do that is through a thing called Tracking Pixel. So the Facebook Tracking Pixel, there's also pixels for Google Ads, there's also pixels for a number of different platforms. But this is just kind of a snippet of code that you install on your website, generally in the head or kind of in the kind of directive portion of your web page. This is where a lot of kind of important information is stored, is in the head of your website. So you install this little code, and you can actually say what you want it to track. You could say, I want it to track like anyone who comes to my website ever. I want to be showing stuff to them again. I just want to be out in front of them again, right? For whatever reason, you've just decided any user who ever comes to my website, regardless of how they came there, I want to be in front of them again. You can do that. You can do that. Tracking Pixels can help you track everyone who comes to your website. And then you can show them ads on Facebook or YouTube or whatever platform you want to. Or you can say, I want to track users who went to a certain page, right? So if for my company, if I wanted clients who are interested in doing more web design projects, and I saw that a user came to my web design page and they spent 15 seconds there, 20 seconds there, 30, whatever. If they spent a significant amount of time in there kind of reading through that content on the web page, I could say, I want to get in front of people who came to my website and then came to this page. You can get in front of those people. Or, another great thing is abandoned carts, right? So if you're an e-commerce company and you're selling these products online, then you can say, I want to get in front of people who came to the website, who added products to their cart, but then never converted, never reached out, never made a purchase, whatever it is. You can target those kind of people. And that is going to be another significantly easier way to be able to land a sale or a conversion or a client or patient or whatever it is than just spending dollars getting in front of people who may or may not really have an interest in what you have to offer. But these people, at least they added a product to their shopping cart, right? That is kind of a way that you can say this person is interested in what I have to offer. So that is kind of it as far as kind of the social media advertising goes in general. I'll go ahead. We have about 12 minutes here, so we have a good amount of time here that we can kind of answer any questions that you might have. Let's see here. Can we go back to the Zoom call? There we go. All right, what questions do you have at this point?
I don't have I just wanted to say that, seriously, you've inspired me. I'm not even kidding. And I've heard this over and over and over, and it's true. And I just want to say thank you because it is so true. We are scared to be judged. We're scared of what people are going to say, if it's high quality or not. And I agree with you, like content. So right now I'm like going down there. I'm like, okay, I think the biggest thing that resonated with me is, what was it that you said? Putting it in like their face again and again and again, the same thing again and again and again. And it just reminded me how important it is to use the same ad, the same two pictures, whatever, over and over.
Yeah.
I really learned a lot from this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Maria. I appreciate you saying that. It's very kind of you. And yeah, that's exactly right. Repetition is key. I would recommend rotating whatever the image or whatever the creative is, but staying in front of them again and again is key. Brian, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, so kind of what sparked, I think, a lot of this video content of being better than images is the YouTube, the transition from YouTube to videos. Why do you think that, so the one word you used was being authentic in the goofier to some of the ads. So tell us what can people do in that to be authentic?
Yeah, I think as far as being authentic, I think a lot of it comes down to dropping the jargon. I think that's a huge one, especially within the legal realm in particular. You know, I'll use that as kind of my perpetual example, so I apologize. But man, there's kind of this idea that I need to talk over people's heads. And the more complicated I make my content, the more difficult things sound, the more likely they are to say, well, screw it, I have no idea what I'm doing, here's my money, right? What we found is if people really can explain what they do very simply and they can just show who they are as a person, right? If they can just talk about the individual, right? Here's Morris Lilienthal, and he talks about different topics that are meaningful to him, right? He just talks about what he thinks is going to be the most advantageous thing for people on whatever the topic is. That gives people so much more opportunity to kind of see like who he is rather than here's all this legalese, here's all this difficult things to understand, hire me because this is an incredibly complex process, right? I just think that if you have something that you think is going to be beneficial for someone, I think it's great to just hop on Facebook and share those things that you think are going to be beneficial. If you have interviews with clients, if you have a chance to be able to talk to someone and say, hey, I was just chatting with someone, so-and-so, they had a question about this particular topic, and I think other people might have this same question. I'm just going to share a couple thoughts I had real quick on this particular topic. Like, I think people really prefer that content because it comes across very genuine, less scripted, less jargon, less all those other things. I think that's just kind of the better way to go about it. Is that helpful as far as that question?
Yeah. I can tell you that that's more what I'm doing now. When I used to have a retail business, and I can tell you that the most viewed video that I ever did, it was actually a Facebook Live that just went, and it was a retail business for cell phone screen repairs, and it was in the month of November, early December. I put a Santa Claus hat on, sunglasses, put a Hawaiian lei around my neck. And I was goofier than heck, and I'd pop in and I did this most dramatic thing that was totally not me, but I'll tell you that it lit up on social media, kind of like the video that you showed of Letitia there throwing whoever Letitia was. I'm not sure if she was the thrower or the person being thrown, dragged by her hair.
Probably both.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I got the most traffic on. I mean, on the as far as views was just incredible, and it was the corniest. My family members even said, "Do not tag me in that video." That's how corny it was. Is they said, "Do not." But I'll tell you, if you want to just look at how many views it got, it was totally being a corny guy. So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a good question. Does anybody know? Is there anybody that you follow on social media or Instagram or anything of that nature? YouTube, whatever the platform is, that you just really, really appreciate their content because it is more genuine? And if so, Maria, do you have an example?
I love Gary Vee.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just, he just tells what you say too. You have your phone, you have everything, and people want to see genuine, not a setup, not fake.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Gary Vee, like as far as like video content goes in general, he has definitely been a leader of that kind of push towards video content. And, you know, is all of it just absolutely breathtakingly produced? I mean, it's okay. It's not bad, but it really is just super run and gun. There's a guy who has his camera and it's a little shaky, but he's listening to him talk about whatever topic it is, right? That's the kind of content that I'm totally in favor of. Does anyone else have anybody that they follow on social media that they just absolutely appreciate the content they produce? Or does anybody else have kind of any other questions as far as, you know, kind of social media advertising or video or anything of that nature?
I do, in that you mentioned and I've been kind of on and off this class, and this is the first one I've done, and I got to say you've knocked it out of the ballpark. I'll just lead it with that. But God, where was I going with this? I was wanted to give you the compliment. Dang it, I lost my train of thought. What was your question again there, Ryan?
well, I was asking if anybody produces any good content on social media that they think is just super solid, or the question also was, what other questions or comments or anything of that nature do you have about social media advertising or video production?
Yes, I know where I was going with this. You mentioned on there that Facebook is the main platform that you recommend. Why is that you recommend that over? And by the way, I 100% agree with you, but I'm questioning why is not Facebook? I guess it's to the audience, and why not LinkedIn, and why not YouTube and things otherwise. So why Facebook?
Good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. So, and the reason I talked about Facebook in particular is one, because all of the other platforms are copying what Facebook has done as far as targeting capabilities. So if you learn it on Facebook, like you know it on TikTok, the principles are so comparable, and that's because TikTok has copied what Facebook has done. So that's one of the reasons I focus on Facebook so heavily, is because it is so all-encompassing. But what I found on LinkedIn, and I've run a number of LinkedIn campaigns. One, I don't think that LinkedIn's capability of being able to target individuals is nearly as robust, which is unfortunate. I don't think that I don't think they have as robust of an algorithm built out for the way that they kind of spend that money. What I found on LinkedIn has been, even if I have the audiences relatively comparable between Facebook and LinkedIn, LinkedIn blows through my budget, blows through it. We're talking thousands of dollars that get spent in a matter of a couple hours. And I'm just like, was that done very well? Was I really getting in front of people, or were they just kind of like, oh, we've got the impressions for you, you're welcome. Facebook, I feel like they spend significantly better because they probably have a lot more information about the users, which once again, we may not go into. I don't want anybody making tinfoil hats, but I do think that that's the case, that they have significantly stronger targeting capabilities based on behaviors, based on whatever it is, right? And even
based
though
on demographics too, don't you think that if a client, if a person that wants to get, like Zoe mentioned, that their audience is between 20 and 30, they probably want to skew a little bit heavier on some Instagram than they do on Facebook. To me, Facebook probably would be more to the 30 plus than the 20 plus. Mm-hmm. I mean, I talked to my son that's 20 years old, and he says, Dad, I haven't been on Facebook in months. It's just, there's straight Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. Things like that, TikTok, and things like that. So
yeah, it all kind of matters once again on your audience. But what I found, if you can't tell, I'm really not a big proponent of LinkedIn just in general. Ever since Microsoft took it over, that was the death of the platform as far as I'm concerned. But what I found is we thought, when I was with my last digital marketing agency, okay, we want to get in front of lawyers. Well, okay, professionals, perfect, LinkedIn. That's not the case. I mean, the amount of time that people spend on Facebook compared to LinkedIn is just not even close, right? And they spend a lot of their leisure time on Facebook. On LinkedIn, it might be more kind of business mindset. But if you're trying to get in front of someone repeatedly, then they're like, oh, I got a notification about, something that my family member did. Okay, cool. Oh, there's an ad, right? I mean, the amount of opportunity that you have to get in front of them is significantly stronger on Facebook and other platforms than LinkedIn. But yeah, Instagram, fantastic platform. TikTok really, really is very, very good. TikTok and Snapchat and some of these other kind of up and coming, well, I don't know about up and coming. Some of these other platforms, they can be even better because the cost to be able to be on those platforms is actually lower than Facebook. Not that Facebook is expensive. So, if you do have an audience that is kind of that younger demographic, then TikTok or Snapchat or kind of some of those other platforms really might be a great avenue to go after. So it all kind of depends on what your objectives are and who your audience is and kind of where they actually spend time. But let's see, we have about 30 seconds here. Are there any other questions that people have or anything that they are looking for? that they'd love for me to provide resources for in the Facebook group? Okay.
Ryan, if I could just I just put a file in the chat box there. This is a survey that we do with all of our classes. We usually hand it out in the third week, which is what this week is. And we'd like to have the feedback. If you could download that form, we'll also trying to be shooting it to you in an email. But if you could download that form that's in the chat box and submit that and put it to the email of Frosty, which is wilsfros@isu.edu, and I put that in the chat box. If you could scan that form and send it back, or somehow take a picture of it, send it back to us. We don't care. Somehow get us that form back. We would have definitely appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. If you guys do have questions, once again, the Facebook group is the place I'd love for you to ask. But feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll do our best to be helpful. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time.
See everybody next week, same time.